Hello. So in astrology, ninth house is seen as a library of worldviews, or as being somewhat of a synthesis of science, spirituality, and symbolism. And these can all fall under both the 8th and the ninth house, but some astrologers place it in the ninth house as a tool of philosophical and spiritual exploration, especially when it's used to seek higher truths. Now, unlike the 8th house where fate happens, the ninth house is where fate is understood. It is where an individual begins to interpret life symbolically through omens, dreams, religious texts, and philosophy. In medieval times, this was the domain of diviners and augurs. And in the architecture of the heavens, the ninth house stands as a threshold, a sacred gate through which the soul peers beyond the walls of daily life. To the ancients, this house was known as the house of God. It is not just the domain of distant lands or higher education, but the part of the chart where divine law, spiritual longing, and cosmic truth converge. In traditional Hermetic astrology, the ninth house wasn't just the house of God, but the realm of ritual magic, prayer, and invocation of divine forces. Ancient astrologers like Firmicus Maternus and Porphyry associated this house with the urgings of the divine, sometimes interpreted as divine speech or prophecy channeled through ritual. The ninth house is where one speaks with the gods, not just studies them. And while foreign is a known keyword for the ninth house, what can be overlooked is its role in cultural fluency, linguistics, and cross-cultural understanding. The ability to not just travel, but to adapt and to integrate into foreign environments comes from this house, as do spiritual journeys, pilgrimages, or quests for meaning. Even short-term retreats or vision quests fall under this domain when they are transformative in a spiritual or philosophical way. So in essence, the ninth house is about stepping beyond limits, whether they're mental, spiritual, or geographical, and embracing the unknown with curiosity and courage. It invites one to become a lifelong student of life itself. The sign on the ninth house cusp reveals the style of how one approaches the sacred, wrestles with philosophy, or pursues the voice of fate. In traditional astrology, this house was not only tied to temples and teachers, but to dreams sent by gods, to oracles who whisper through symbols, and journeys which were made in the name of something higher than the self. And in my previous video, I talked about dreams and how they're connected with the ninth house. But dreams are also linked to the 12th house in general. And still, ninth house can reflect prophetic or spiritual dreams, especially those that shape beliefs or awaken spiritual insight. And people with strong ninth house placement can often have visions, synchronicities, or vivid dreams tied to their belief systems. The ninth house can reveal a person's beliefs inherited from family or early childhood conditioning, especially when planets in the ninth house are ruled by the fourth house planets or vice versa. And this can add a deep-rooted, so to speak, emotional layer to one's belief system. 10th house is often linked to the father in modern astrology, but traditional or Vedic astrology sometimes associates the 9th house with the father, especially as a moral or spiritual guide. In this context, it can represent mentors, gurus, or teachers who shape a person's beliefs and worldview. 9th house is also associated with publishing and sharing ideas. It is the house that governs not just acquiring knowledge, but spreading it through writing, teaching, or public speaking. So if you find planets like Mercury or Venus here, you might notice a talent for communicating complex ideas in ways that captivate others. One might be drawn to writing books, teaching, or any form of storytelling that crosses cultural boundaries. The ruler of the 9th house, so the planet that rules the sign on that cusp, plays a big role in how the 9th house energy unfolds. So let's say, for example, one's 9th house cusp is in Scorpio. Then Mars, or Pluto, depending on your system, will be the ruler, and where that planet sits in one's chart shows where and how one's philosophical or spiritual growth might take place. If Pluto is in the 12th house, for example, 9th house themes could be connected to secret knowledge or deep inner transformation. In terms of planetary placements inside the 9th house, they give a distinct flavor to how this expansion plays out. For example, if Jupiter, the natural ruler of the 9th house, sits here, its energy is magnified. Jupiter in the 9th can bless someone with an insatiable hunger for knowledge, a love of travel, and a philosophical outlook that's both optimistic and broad. One might feel a deep urge to explore different cultures or to dive into spiritual or legal studies. But it is important to watch that Jupiter here doesn't lead to overconfidence or a tendency to take on too much without fully digesting it. If Saturn is found in the ninth house, the picture changes. Saturn brings discipline, structure, and sometimes restrictions. In this house, it can indicate someone who approaches higher learning or travel cautiously, or maybe one has experienced delays or limitations in education or spiritual growth early or later on in life, and that will depend on the sign and aspects. But with time, Saturn teaches perseverance and deep wisdom, helping the person build a solid, realistic philosophy of life that's earned through experience. Mars in the ninth house almost injects fiery energy into exploration. This person might feel restless and driven to constantly push boundaries, whether through physical adventure or intellectual debate. Now, these people can be passionate advocates for their beliefs, sometimes fiercely so, which can be inspiring, but also a bit confrontational if not balanced. Planets like Mars or Mercury in the ninth house can give one a restless mind or intense debates on spiritual or political topics. And Venus here can soften the house's tone, making one appreciate beauty and harmony in different cultures or philosophies. When planets go retrograde in the ninth house, they often prompt a deep internal questioning of previously held beliefs, sometimes even leading to philosophical crises or conversions. And this is different from Mercury retrograde confusion, as it is more similar to Socratic unlearning. What is interesting is that usually before people have major personal awakenings, so spiritual, psychological, or ideological, there's usually a transit or progression involving the ninth house, mostly by Uranus or Neptune, even Pluto if you use it. And this can coincide with sudden insight, a symbolic pilgrimage, or a new teacher appearing. And now let's move on to the ascendants. Through each rising sign, the traveler's or pilgrim's path shifts, and sometimes it is lit by fire, sometimes it is lost in fog, and sometimes it is carved in stone. But always it points to the same unseen star, the search for meaning. For those with Sagittarius rising, the ninth house falls in Leo, which is ruled by the sun. Now, these individuals have a strong sense of purpose and a kind of inner brightness when it comes to their beliefs, values, and worldview. They often feel as if they're meant for something greater. They're drawn toward big ideas, spiritual understanding, or global perspectives. There's a natural inclination toward teaching and learning with a strong desire for independence. Many thrive in higher education, particularly in areas like art, culture, or even politics. And while they often benefit from international connections and research, long-distance travel can sometimes bring frustration or discomfort. Inherited property is often passed smoothly to their children, but they might face challenges when it comes to structured administration or bureaucracy. Overall, they tend to approach life with optimism and adaptability, often finding themselves in the right place at the right time. For those with Scorpio rising, the ninth house falls in Cancer and it is ruled by the moon. Now, this creates a deep emotional connection to belief systems and personal values. Their beliefs tend to evolve based on their emotional state and personal experiences, but they possess a natural sensitivity to truth and meaning. Higher education may bring some obstacles early on, but over time they benefit greatly from continued learning, especially when it is self-driven or emotionally meaningful. In some cases, there may be complex dynamics in their personal lives, including the potential for extramarital affairs. They often inherit ancestral property or wealth, and frequent travel is common, usually for personal growth or learning. On a more traditional note, older astrological texts suggest a shorter lifespan for these people, though modern interpretations tend to focus more on the intensity with which these individuals experience life. Career-wise, they do well in fields like finance, statistics, international business, or communications, especially when working behind the scenes or in support roles. If the chart supports it, they can also make excellent financial advisors. Ultimately, they tend to find success when they align themselves with larger groups, societies, or shared causes. For those with Libra rising, the ninth house falls in Gemini, which is ruled by Mercury. These individuals have a naturally curious and adaptable approach to learning. They're often drawn to study a variety of spiritual traditions or philosophical systems, weaving together insights from different cultures and perspectives. Now, these individuals are strong communicators with a real talent for debate, teaching, and writing, especially on topics that explore deeper meaning or belief. Their learning style is conversational and open-minded, and they thrive in environments that encourage dialogue and the exchange of ideas. Travel, especially abroad, often serves as both an intellectual and social adventure. It is not uncommon for them to pursue studies in foreign countries or to develop strong interests in international cultures. They also tend to have a natural talent for foreign commerce, trade, or diplomacy. On a more practical level, they may not retain ancestral property for long, and there can be occasionally tensions with neighbors. But overall, they come across as reliable, thoughtful, and genuinely interested in understanding the world through connection and conversation. Frequent travel and an always curious mind define much of their life path. For Capricorn Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Virgo, which is also ruled by Mercury. Now, these people often become scholars of sacred law or divine order, dedicating themselves to understanding and fulfilling their duties. Their fortune tends to grow as they carry out their responsibilities with care and diligence. They have a practical wisdom and skill set that helps them build success, especially in fields related to management or culture. They're known for their pleasant manners and willingness to take on responsibilities, though they usually prefer to keep their knowledge to themselves rather than sharing it openly. When it comes to higher education or living abroad, their experiences may be marked by fluctuations. Confidence and stability can be temporary. Now, these people can have ancestral properties and often find success through agreements or partnerships with societies. Also, they can sometimes gain through a more greedy or ambitious nature, which drives them toward achievement. For Virgo Ascendant, the ninth house is in Taurus, which is ruled by Venus. These individuals are known for speaking the truth, but they do it in a very diplomatic and polite way. They're good or wise at managing resources, which helps bring them fortune in the areas this house influences. Their beliefs often focus on harmony, peace, and an appreciation for beauty. They tend to love rituals and aesthetics, especially when it comes to spirituality that's connected to nature or sensual experiences. People tend to trust them. They also might face financial difficulties, and even so, they do well in school, especially in subjects related to money management. Physically, they can be a bit shorter. They might also have some problems related to inherited property, which can cause extra financial stress. On the positive side, they're quick at making decisions and have strong research skills. Careers like shipping or money lending could suit them well. Despite some challenges, good opportunities often come their way. Also, they usually enjoy rich and flavorful foods. For Aquarius Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Libra, which is traditionally also ruled by Venus. Their beliefs tend to focus on justice, harmony, and balance. These people often have a natural ability to attract fortune and happiness with ease. Once they find an ideal or belief that truly resonates with their inner self, they become deeply devoted and proud of it, and not out of vanity, but because they recognize its truth and value. Many of them are well suited to roles as counselors or lawyers. However, there can be a tendency to get involved in illegal business activities or secret relationships, sometimes with foreign partners. Academically, they usually have the capacity to excel, which can lead them to careers as teachers or professors. Their credibility and reputation tend to grow stronger with age. Even if they don't pursue advanced academic degrees, their strong memory and dedication may lead them to complete diploma courses or earn honorary positions. This allows them to build a respected name, achieve professional success, and contribute meaningfully to their fields. For Leo Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Aries, which is ruled by Mars. Now, these individuals express their beliefs with a lot of fiery enthusiasm and tend to learn best through direct, energetic experiences. These people have a strong will to fight for and protect their ideals, their sense of law, and their home. Their fortune often comes from their own effort and determination, but this strong will can sometimes lead to conflicts with others, especially around their beliefs. When it comes to careers, they usually excel in fields related to machinery, construction, the automobile industry, or agriculture. However, they might find it easy to get distracted from their higher studies. There's also a risk of getting into trouble through illegal affairs, particularly with close relatives. These individuals have the potential to publish books, especially on educational topics, or become skilled orators and mediators. They tend to have a strong memory and could do very well in mathematics. Their approach to commitments is usually steady and independent. Physically, they have deep sleep and calm actions, but they might experience transformations in their body over time, particularly involving reproductive organs, which can sometimes lead to becoming stout. For Pisces Ascendant, the ninth house falls in Scorpio, which is also ruled by Mars. This may mean that faith and belief systems aren't just handed to these individuals, they're formed through personal struggle or emotional crisis. Mars brings a forceful, sometimes secretive energy, so these people often come to their truths the hard way. But even during hard times, they seem to have a kind of natural protection, especially when it comes to material or financial stability. Also, their beliefs can sometimes stir up conflict, as they tend to be very outspoken or passionate about what they believe in, which can lead to friction with others. They tend to go all in for what they care about, sometimes to extremes, and that includes both legal and illegal matters. They've got sharp research minds and can find themselves thinking deeply about the painful or hidden sides of life. Their careers, studies, or long journeys are usually steady, but that really depends on the placement and condition of Mars in their chart and other aspects. Where they really tend to excel is in fields like finance, foreign exchange, transport, communication, or anything involving electricity or technology. But again, there's a risk of getting caught up in less than legal activities in those same areas. Academically, they might move a bit more slowly, often because they're just not that interested or focused early on. And financially, they could face challenges, especially if they're juggling a second career or spending too much. For Aries Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Sagittarius, which is ruled by Jupiter. Now, Jupiter also rules the 12th house, so there's an interesting connection between higher education, foreign travel, and inner personal growth. These people might experience mental blocks or lose interest in their studies from time to time, which can result in changing schools or switching academic programs. Noticeable is their intellectual confidence, a bit of intellectual arrogance. They tend to hold to their beliefs strongly. Career-wise, they're often drawn to areas like research, international trade, law, finance, or transportation. Some losses or setbacks, especially related to their ideals or long-term goals, aren't necessarily bad, as they often clear the path for the future success. Jupiter's influence might mean some initial challenges or financial expenses, but these usually turn out to be investments that bring prosperity and satisfaction later on. Also, traveling abroad tends to be quite fortunate and bring positive opportunities for them. For Cancer Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Pisces, which is traditionally also ruled by Jupiter. Now, these individuals often have a gentle, compassionate nature with a strong capacity for forgiveness and emotional insight. They tend to gain wisdom through adversity, learning important lessons from their challenges and even from those who oppose them. This ability to transform hardship into personal growth can lead to eventual success through persistent effort. There is typically a weaker emotional connection to the father figure, and yet a deep attraction to spiritual mentors and visionary thinkers is seen. Their approach to understanding truth is more intuitive rather than analytical, relying more on feeling than logic. These individuals may pursue studies or research involving foreign cultures or locations, and in some cases their experiences abroad may include secretive or even illegal involvements, and they may find themselves living in foreign countries for extended periods. Everything associated with the ninth house is marked by fluctuation and change. Professionally, they may be drawn to caregiving roles such as nursing, or conversely, to leadership positions in government, law, diplomacy, finance, or religious institutions. Health-wise, they can be prone to hereditary conditions, allergies, and they often have overeating tendencies. Academically, these people tend to progress slowly but steadily and can achieve meaningful outcomes over time. For Taurus Ascendant, the ninth house falls in Capricorn, which is ruled by Saturn. Now, these people usually have a strong sense of purpose and a practical, grounded approach to life. They're typically disciplined and committed. They're the kind who focus on what needs to be done and work patiently toward their goals. That said, their success often comes later in life. It is not always fast or easy. There might be career changes or pauses, but things tend to improve as they get older. They take their responsibilities seriously and often prefer to follow rules and to do things the right way. Some of them may receive help or support through less than official or even slightly shady channels, not necessarily by choice, but it's just how things unfold. When it comes to education, they're often drawn to technical fields, sciences, or even medicine, and anything that requires structure and logic. They may also spend money on religious or spiritual rituals, which reflects how tradition and belief systems can hold an important place in their lives. For Gemini Ascendant individuals, the ninth house falls in Aquarius, traditionally also ruled by Saturn. Now, there is usually a deep need to construct a personal and meaningful belief system, though frequently shaped through crisis. It is not uncommon for these individuals to experience significant challenges before arriving at the truths they seek. Their faith may be marked by periods of uncertainty or vulnerability, which can at times lead to rigid or dogmatic views as a form of compensation. However, spiritual understanding tends to deepen and mature with age. They're generally drawn to higher education, often pursuing studies in areas aligned with their personal interests. Academic paths may not be linear. Interruptions or delays in formal education are possible, as are difficulties in research endeavors. Their intellectual interests may include history, archaeology, agriculture, teaching, geology, or politics. But they can be especially good in the field of teaching. This stands out as a significant theme. On a more personal note, there also may be a tendency toward engaging in secretive or socially unconventional intimate relationships, which adds complexity to their personal journey. As we trace the arc of the ninth house through the 12 ascendants, we find that the quest for truth wears many faces. Some find the divine in words, others in silence. Some must travel across seas, others only across a dream. In the old ways of astrology, the heavens were not merely observed, they were lived. The ninth house was not abstract, but intimate. It spoke how one's spirit stretched toward the divine, how the mortal self sought guidance from immortal laws. It is the house of pilgrimage, but the pilgrimage may take place in a courtroom, a monastery, a foreign city, or it can be a private epiphany at dusk. Each ascendant brings a new map to this sacred journey, and in following it, we remember what the ancients knew so well, that belief is not just what we hold in our minds, it is how we walk through the world. This is only the surface, and if you're ready to go deeper into ancient thought, please subscribe and press a like and notification button. I'd love to hear how all of this connects with you if you want to share, as it is your engagement that shapes the depth of what I share, like deeper structures of ancient thought, beyond what is commonly known. Only those who stay long enough will begin to see. Just be willing to step further into the forgotten paths of wisdom with me. Thank you for watching and being here today. See you next week. Bye.